Welcome to Radio Hour from Contrabass Conversations. This is a new idea for the show, taking one topic and exploring multiple perspectives on it from past guests. And my plan is to put one of these out every few weeks. I really hope you enjoy it. I'd love to get your feedback. You can email me at feedback@contrabassconversations.com and check out all our hundreds of shows in the archives at contrabassconversations.com. Now, this episode is sponsored by D'Addario Strings. And D'Addario is doing a giveaway for Contrabass Conversations listeners. Go to contrabassconversations.com/strings to fill out a survey and get a chance to win a free set of strings from D'Addario. I'm using their Zyx strings right now. They've got a great sound. They're very gut-like, nice growl for pizzicato. They bow very well, and I am just enjoying them so much. I'm using the medium gauge. They also come in light gauge. You can get them with the long E string for your C extension. They're made in the USA at the D'Addario String Factory in New York. Check them out, and thanks, guys, for sponsoring the podcast. Today's topic is fitness and how it affects your life in music and outside of music. You're going to be hearing 9 different perspectives besides me. You're going to hear Alex Hanna, principal bass of the Chicago Symphony, Lloyd Goldstein, who is a music practitioner in Tampa, Florida at the Moffitt Cancer Center, David Allen Moore of the Los Angeles Philharmonic and USC, Ira Gold of the National Symphony and Peabody Conservatory, Paul Ellison of Rice University, Ian Hallis of the Lyric Opera of Chicago, Scott Pingle of the San Francisco Symphony, Guy Tunay, internationally known soloist, and Jory Herman of the San Diego Symphony. I'll have links to all of their interviews. They've all been on the show in the past, and we talked about, at least in part, about fitness, about running, about yoga, about athletics, about musical athletes, and that's what we're going to dig into. I decided to start here after winning the audition. Winning the audition was a 4-part show like this. And I have been fascinated by fitness and music and how the two intertwine and just what fitness does for your life in general. I've gone through many phases in my life in terms of fitness. When I was in late high school, after school, I would go to this Midwestern taco chain. It's called Taco John's, and I would get what they call the 6-pack and a pound. That is, no kidding, a 6-pack of hard-shell tacos and a pound of tater tots. And then I'd eat dinner later that evening. Not the most amazing lifestyle in terms of health. And I've gone through many phases beyond that. I'll talk about that later. But I want to dig in first with Alex Hanna, principal bass of the Chicago Symphony, and how he kept himself in shape during the audition circuit and what he does now.
I think you have to exercise. I know very few people who play the bass and are healthy that don't exercise. So I think it's really important to strengthen your legs and your back for the bass. So when I was getting ready for my auditions, I was doing a lot of running, occasional yoga, and actually, just thinking back to the Chicago audition, yoga was actually a big thing for me during those years. In fact, the day of my final audition when I got the job, I woke up an hour early and did a yoga DVD in my hotel room. And I find first thing in the morning to do yoga or meditation or something like that really sets a great tone for the day. You're starting from a place of peace and relaxation. It's like you're starting at 100% instead of starting at, oh my gosh, the audition's today, what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So I love that. Even if it's just 5 minutes of closing your eyes, doing some deep breathing, right at the beginning of the day. I remember when my alarm would go off the day of an audition, I would be so excited. Do you ever have that feeling?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just like, today's the day.
Yeah.
You want to have that feeling. I guess that comes from preparation and experience. But, that really set me up for success that day. So, I was really into yoga during those years. Since then, I've realized that yoga is fantastic, and I'll never stop doing it. entirely, but it really kind of thins you out and doesn't build a whole lot of strength. Throughout my Curtis years, and actually throughout the first 4 or 5 years of my professional career, I've had on and off, aches and pains here and there where you start to wonder, oh my gosh, is this tendonitis? What's happening to me? And I think I was having those because I wasn't really building a whole lot of like upper body, back strength. And really ever since I got here, a wonderful friend and colleague in the bass section, Rob Cassinger, had been telling me I should check out this CrossFit gym that he and his wife go to. And I finally signed up to do it, and that's changed a lot for me. It's a really fun way to lift weights, do cardio, and it's a real variety of exercises. So that's helped me out big time. It's given me so much more energy in my playing. Playing 3 or 4 hour long operas, it's like no big deal. So so today I'm doing CrossFit probably 3 or 4 times a week, and I try to go to like 1 yoga class a week just to keep my muscles flexible, and it's also kind of a nice way to relax. But something to get you active, because if you're not, if all you're doing is not eating well, not exercising, you're gonna have problems. Eating well is another big one. For students in college, I think it's really important. My diet at Curtis sucked. I mean, it was embarrassing. I was just like inhaling coffee and, eating junk food and all this stuff. And then I would wonder why I'm like on the verge of tendonitis or something like that. Well, you have to take care of yourself just like an athlete would. It'd be very silly to see an Olympic athlete, not eat right. So why do you think a musician would be any different?
So yoga, running, meditation, and now CrossFit for Alex. In terms of the diet thing, I totally identify with what Alex is talking about. I started to clean up my diet and start exercising during my undergraduate degree at Northwestern. It had a major impact on my energy level, my stress level, and really my whole life. I started to find that if I didn't get a workout in, I was just off for the rest of the day. And once I entered freelance life, I found myself slipping into those bad diet and low exercise habits. Living in the car, doing 50,000 miles each year. For me, that turned into a lot of Burger King, a lot of McDonald's, lots of fries, lots of soda, lots of processed food, and not a lot of sleep, stress, all that sort of thing. No wonder I was stalling out of my career with those kind of health habits. And at my max, I think I was around 220 pounds. Right now I'm around 170, which is a 50-pound difference. And it's amazing what a difference not carrying on 50 pounds of extra fat makes on your life in every way. Lloyd Goldstein is a certified music practitioner at the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. He's a former member of the Florida Orchestra, longtime Francois Rabat student. I had him on the podcast this fall. Such a great guy, such an inspiring interview. You should definitely listen to that if you haven't. Lloyd and I had a great time getting to catch up in person in Prague and talk about how Lloyd transformed his life through yoga in part. So yoga is huge for Lloyd, and it was a catalyst for his creativity, as you'll hear.
The yoga practice started at around the same time that I met Francois. My back had been bothering me, or maybe a little earlier. I couldn't tell you the exact year, but my back was bothering me, and I went to a chiropractor, and he adjusted it, and I said, so how long will I be coming back to you? And he said, for the rest of your life. And I said, basically in my mind, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So I just started doing yoga. And for me, it was 15 years of hour and a half a day. I mean, the practice became very powerful for me. And it was the start of almost every day for me. And it's only been in the last few years that I kind of let it go for a while, but I'm back into practicing now. There's more to us than we realize in our, everyday mind.
Yeah.
You know, we're deeper than that. We know more than we think. We're able to access a better focus and a creative flow. It's basically yoga. I think the key is it's remembering what we already know on a regular basis. Remembering that we need to have an open heart to make beautiful music. Remembering that we have to come to each day with kind of a beginner's mind, willing to evolve, willing to be open to new things, new directions, new ideas. And we need to dump garbage. We accumulate a lot of garbage throughout our lives. I'm going to be 60 this year. And there's a heck of a lot of stuff that happens throughout your life that if you don't find a way to let go of it and dump it, it can really burden you as time goes on. So this, for me, besides the physical aspect of yoga, it's a way of remembering what I'm capable of, remembering what my priorities are, what my purpose is, and having a better access to my creative self. In the first 2 years of the yoga practice, 700 pieces of writing poured out of me.
Oh, wow.
And 400 drawings.
For Lloyd, it was the yoga that unlocked his creativity. For me, it's running. Running realigns me, kind of like Lloyd describes. It helps to connect me with the world in really hard to describe way, and it's a total creative catalyst for me. About 20 minutes into a run, the ideas really start flowing for me. And I'm reminded of a Tony Robbins phrase, something like change your physical state to change your mental state. I've been trying to live by that philosophy. Now, speaking of running, David Allen Moore, USC bass professor and Los Angeles Philharmonic bass player, he went through a major life change when he got into running. I have 2 clips to share from David. The first is the genesis of the running and how he eventually became an ultra-marathon runner. So I love to run, but my runs, I think a great run for me would be about 5 miles. That'd be like the max that I would do. And I know that that's been a major part of your life the last several years. And I'd love to know just the story behind that and when you got inspired to do that and how you became, now you're running ultra marathons. So how did that all develop?
Well, there's 2 versions of the story. There's the short one that's about running, and then there's the long one, which is sort of about larger life choices, in the sense that right before or around the sabbatical year, I've had a couple of issues with nerve pain and really debilitating nerve pain in my legs to the point of like not being able to move or walk. And at some point had to deal with that physically in terms of, not that I was ever morbidly obese, but just being a little bit overweight and out of shape. And the process of kind of getting with a trainer and dealing with that and dealing with some kind of structural issues, physically, muscular imbalances and all of that. And at some point my trainer was like, well, you should, do something cardio wise. And so, I think running would be good. And I was always a terrible runner and was horrible and uncomfortable and hated it, but just kind of doing, a mile on the treadmill or something like that. So it started with a couple miles and I was working it up and it was getting better. And he said, well, you shouldn't just do this to do this. You should try a half marathon. So I was like, okay. So I trained up for that and got that going. And then he said, well, great. How was that? Like, fine. But I couldn't imagine turning around and like doing it again, like doing the full thing. But he said, no, I think you're ready. You can go do that. So I continued the training, did a full marathon and just kind of went from there. I think I don't know if it was the very next thing I did, but maybe a couple races later, did a 50 miler and then 100K. And I'm still actually very soon going to make another attempt at 100 miles, but I haven't achieved that yet. I've made it 80, but due to a variety of factors that hasn't panned out, but hopefully this Saturday is going to go great.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What, I think probably the max I've ever run is 10 miles. And people listening, maybe some people have done marathons of 26 miles, but I'd love to know, what's the experience like hitting mile 40 or 50 or 60? What's that experience like?
It's probably a lot like playing opera in that the time scale sort of shifts. Like, when you're going for an hour run or something, like the first half hour takes a long time. And I always wondered what was going to happen at 26.3. And it's just, you just don't stop. You just keep going. I mean, it sounds like it's oversimplification, but that is sort of it. But I have found myself at various points, in a race where you look at your watch and you go, okay, so in 2.5 hours, I'm going to be at this point. And then you realize how ludicrous that sounds out of that context, but you've already been running for 10 hours. So everything just kind of slows down and expands in that way of like, I remember the first 100K I completed at some point going, all right, only a marathon to go, and thinking that was a logical thing to say at the time. But again, realizing that sounds kind of preposterous out of context. So yeah, it's just, you can't, a coach that I work with, he said, you just have to run. It's kind of a good metaphor for anything. It's like you run aid station to aid station. You don't think about like, I have to run 50 miles. It's like the next aid station is 6 miles. So that's a 6 mile run. Then I reload my water, and then I have an 8 mile run, and then I reload again. And then I have maybe a 10 mile stretch or whatever. And so you're chunking it down into things that you can mentally manage and conceive of so you don't freak out.
It's probably a good way to manage a lot of aspects of life, right?
That for sure.
Okay, here's the second clip about the broader impact of this on different areas of his life. So what effects has that had on just your life in general? I mean, that's got to be a major transformation.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know the last time we talked, I wasn't doing anything physical at all like that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, has that like affected your bass playing?
Everything. I mean, I would say that from a physical standpoint, it seems like a lot of work and extra effort to like get up early and do that kind of stuff before concerts or before teaching or whatever. But I found that if I don't do that, I wouldn't be able to put the demands on myself that I do, because, now I'm here teaching full time. I'm with the Philharmonic full time. I know it's impossible to say that you do two things full time, but this is considered a full time teaching position. And so just to have the stamina to be able to do that, I find that the running helps to provide me with that. The periodicity of the training and the knowing that like I could look ahead 2 weeks and tell you what I'm doing on a Thursday has sort of influenced how I do my own preparation in terms of practicing, of like blocking stuff out in longer chunks and not just doing the typical thing of rolling into the practice room and going, what am I going to do today? Or maybe what am I going to do tomorrow? But actually blocking it out in larger segments. And I haven't really explored this fully, but I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of periodicity in training, meaning when you're running, you have maintenance days, you have easy days, you have speed days, you have volume days. And so, like I said, I haven't really pursued this, but the idea of like you're going to have days where you only do slow practice and days where you do only things with bursts of speed where you're trying to get like more coordinated movements, and days where you're playing for endurance, so you're seeing how long you can go without stopping, or, breaking it up and into ideas like that. And one thing that actually has also really influenced me from the running is that, runners, because it's a repetitive type thing, are notorious for getting injured, and as are musicians for the same reason. And so there's a standard kind of common formula in running that you don't increase your volume more than 10% a week to avoid those kind of overuse injuries. And I know a lot of times with musicians, because it's something that we're so close to and passionate about, that you get involved with something, or you might have taken some time off, or you might be in a new situation, and you just dive into it with everything you have, and you go from playing 2 or 3 hours a day to playing 8 hours a day, and then a couple days later you realize you can't sustain that intensity. Whereas if you look at it over a longer period, you can do that in a safer and more sane way. It was certainly something I noticed from taking a sabbatical, like getting out of the orchestra and getting back on that pony after not being on the schedule that we have for a year was eye-opening, because now the volume of work that we do, other than the time commitment, physically doesn't faze me. It's like we could be playing whatever, however many times, not a big deal. But getting out of that loop was a bit of like jumping into a cold pool when you get back, and as I'm sure it is for anybody when they get their first job like that. Yeah, that was definitely another thing that was a parallel between the two.
I love the idea of applying principles of periodic training to exercise in the practice room. I need to start testing that out as well. It's great. Ira Gold, the National Symphony Peabody Conservatory, he has made running a regular practice as well. Here's a clip. I know that you run, and I know that you cycle, you're a cyclist. How often do you do those two activities? Is that a daily thing for you, one or the other?
The cycling is more seasonal. I tend to do that more in spring and summertime. And the running is more almost year-round. I mean, recently when we had a lot of snow here in Washington, you couldn't even walk anywhere because it was so massive. But in general, basically since we adopted our dog, which was about 4 years ago. I kind of got into running through that because our dog is a German Shorthair Pointer, and she was 1 year old, and they need a lot of movement and exercise. So it became a habit that every day she would be out and about. And so for a while, it was just became routine that we would just go out with her sometimes twice a day. So I kind of got into long walks and running through that new sort of addition to the family. And, you know, I've done some half marathons and marathon and other races and things like that. So it's kind of just become just a sort of normal part of my life. I'd say almost every day, if the weather, even if the weather isn't totally accommodating, we tend to get out every morning and do 3 or 4 miles, walking or running or some combination. So that's been good. It's kept me in shape and helps me with lots of other things. Like more recently, over the last couple of years, I've been standing full time with the orchestra job and everything else. So the running seems to have supported some of the strength that I need to stand up all the time.
Paul Ellison, longtime Rice University double bass professor, he describes performers as musical athletes. I love that concept. Here's Paul on that topic.
Bass and the body, like just talk a little about that relationship between staying physically fit and approaching the instrument.
Sure. Well, you know, I would take it to a larger step. When you think about the fact that we can't deny that we are musical athletes. Mm-hmm. There is nobody, sometimes percussionists, sometimes pianists, but we are constantly using our bodies more than just about everybody on any instrument. And then, if you compare that to athletics in general, what is it that all ball players do, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, soccer, and rugby and all of that? You have to have the kind of endurance and the kind of energy to take you through being able to put a ball in a hoop or throw it across the field or hit it with the stick. Whatever it is you do, you have to be in good enough touch with your body mentally and physically to get the result that you desire for whatever the skill is that you're going to do. And the more you look at yourself holistically, the more you're aware, your proprioception, one of my favorite words, of what your body is doing at all times, the more ability you have to understand and get your mind and your body to act at the same time and go in the same direction. How do we deal with breathing in music? And it's a problem if your music breathing is different than any other breathing. And then we look at some of the disciplines that are out there, which include Tai Chi and yoga and martial arts, etc. All of them have components of how you manage your breath just as a person. And if we get in touch with that and we learn a healthy way to breathe, which in fact is to just breathe and not allow it to affect what we do or not allow what we do to affect our breathing, we're in much better shape and we're much more able to be interactive and focused in a way that when we play or when we do our athletic event, we're actually conscious and not just going on muscle memory and previous experience, but we're actually in the game when we're there. We're in the zone and conscious of everything that we're doing.
Ian Hallis, who plays in the Lyric Opera of Chicago, he's a former student of Paul's, and he elaborates on the musical athletes concept.
I mean, when I was an undergrad, Paul he always talked about musicians as being athletes, and it's so true, especially for bass player. You know, although we do use our small muscle groups, we also have to use large muscle groups as well. It's really important that we study all those successful athletes who've been successful for so long, because even though we're not ever going to make as much money as they are, we still need to be just as consistent, if not more, than they are to be able to do our job well. Scott
Pingle, principal bass of the San Francisco Symphony, got seriously into martial arts and found several parallels between this and studying the bass.
I was also very avid with exercise. I was, at the same time I was doing all of that, I was deeply studying the martial arts. And I was an instructor. I got my black belt during my junior year in college, but it was something that I had been taking very seriously for years. In fact, in the summertime that was one of my sources of income in addition to playing gigs was I would teach martial arts in Madison, because my junior year in high school was when I started doing that. And it was always a very integral part of my studies. There's a lot of things I learned from martial arts that I would apply philosophically towards my
Guy Tuna, who I've had on the podcast several times, well-known soloist, recorded for Deutsche Grammophon, solo bass. He lost quite a bit of weight over the past few years. In fact, I barely recognized him when I reconnected with him earlier this year. And he talks about how different he feels and how his approach to the instrument has changed as a result of this weight loss.
You need to balance when you have this stress. So sport, good eating, good sleeping, try to have a very good lifestyle. Yeah. So I think it's sports, a lot of double bass practice, and Well, so it was a point in my life when everything was breaking down, and the only thing which stays was practically the bass playing, and this was what saved me. So and it's changed. It's changed a lot. I lost, I think, something like 50 kilos.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm.
It makes such a difference just in the way you feel overall. I mean, just like being a performer and using your body, just that physical, the act that you do every day, just what you're putting into your body and the shape you're in, it's got to feel really different now.
It feels different, and it feels different. I'm sweating on stage. I'm a person that when he goes on stage, I'm very excited and I'm sweating a lot. And when you are like 140 kilos sweating on stage, it's still different when you're sweating when you're only 80 kilos. So this is one aspect. The other aspect, if I would be an opera singer, I think it would be dramatically a big change. Yeah. But I'm trying to use my body as it is, and I'm trying not to play or to work against the material. So if I would be a person who make wrong, well, you know that I'm really to believe in to play as natural as it is. And because of this, I was thinking, well, back then, when you have some kilos on your shoulders, it sounds maybe better, but it's not true. It's not true. You don't have to be big to have a big sound or small sound. But it's a truly different feeling. I mean, you come on stage and it's live. I feel much better.
We close out this episode on fitness and how it affects you with a clip from San Diego Symphony bassist Jory Herman. Jory uses the phrase athletes of the small muscles, and he also offers up thoughts on balancing yourself as a person and how that radiates out into inspiration in general, broadening your mind, and those kind of topics.
You need to take care of yourself, and what we do on the instrument is taxing. We are truly like athletes of the small muscles, and so we have to think about the longevity of what we're doing and taking care of ourselves, not only in the kind of kinesthetic and the body movement way, but also what we're putting into our bodies and how we're moving and exercising and also the mind as well, whether it's meditation or yoga or some sort of clearing of the mind, and like we talked about, also the inspiration side of things. So how whether it's reading or going to presentations or seminars or other concerts, or there's all different aspects of you as a person, as a musician. That it's going to be in flux, and it's like that kind of pie chart. It's always, those lines are always kind of moving, and it's that's why I mentioned, like, every few months you kind of have to have that conversation of, okay, where are we now? Where's this line? Where's that line? Where's that part of our life, and what needs to change? Or maybe there's no answers, but you're at least talking about it.
People that haven't seen me in the last 8 or 9 years keep telling me how thin I look when I meet them in person. And for me, I think it was when I took the high school gig that I started to lose weight more dramatically. I think spending your days running around corralling teenagers and waving your arms in front of an army of squirrely young people is a good way to keep the pounds off. And that coincided with just starting to eat better in general, going for long walks and running as much as I could, which was More challenging in Chicago with the long commute and the icy winters. Much easier here in San Francisco. But, as a result, I think of the weight loss and the exercise, I feel much more energetic throughout the day, and I'm just so much better balanced and focused and in a better mood in general here at 40 than when I was 30 or probably when I was 20. I mean, it's strange to think about, but it's true. And it's just remarkable how much fitness affects every aspect of your life. Your musicianship, your playing for sure, but your mindset, your attitude, your energy, all those kind of things. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this first installment of Radio Hour. I guess it's kind of the second installment because of winning the audition, but I like the idea of visiting a particular topic, and I've got dozens in mind. So let me know what you think, and let me know if you have an idea for a topic. Part of what I love about podcasting is how flexible it is. And it's kind of cool to do these virtual roundtables, right? I mean, some of these people we talked months, years apart even, different parts of the globe, but we can bring people together to share perspectives on a similar topic. And that's just one of the cool things about this technology. So I hope you enjoyed it. You can get all the info at contrabassconversations.com about everything that's been going on for the past 10 years, almost 10 years here on the podcast. Reach out to me, feedback at contrabassconversations.com. And thank you to D'Addario for sponsoring these podcasts. If you're interested in helping out in any way, shape, or form with the show, I have every way you can do it, both financial and otherwise, listed at contrabassconversations.com/support. So check that out, and I will see you again soon for more Radio Hour, more News Hour. We're thinking about starting Music Hour, which could be pretty cool, and our interview shows that you know and have listened to for years. So thanks again. We will see you again soon for more life in the low end of the spectrum.